My name is Ren Halloway, and I was 31 the morning I woke up in a hospital bed and learned my parents had signed my childhood home over to my brother while I was unconscious. The nurse had just clipped a fresh bag of saline onto the pole when my phone buzzed on the tray table, and I read the message twice because the first time my brain refused to translate the letters into sense. It was from my cousin Della, and it said only, "They had the papers notarized yesterday. I'm so sorry, I thought you knew." Below it was a photograph of a quitclaim deed, the kind of document I had seen exactly twice in my life. Once when I helped an elderly client file one and once in a training module, and there at the bottom in my mother's careful slanted script was her name, and beside it my father's, and on the line marked Grantee was my brother Corin's full name, Corin Bennett Halloway, written in his looping show-off cursive like a signature on a birthday card. The house on Larkspur Lane, the little blue house with the warped step and the pear tree that dropped fruit on the roof every September. The house I had paid the property taxes on for the last 4 years out of my own checking account because my father had quietly stopped working and my mother had quietly stopped admitting it. I read the message a third time and I did not scream. I did not cry. I set the phone face down on the blanket and watched the saline drip, one bead and then another, and I felt something in my chest go very still, the way a room goes still when the furnace finally clicks off and you realize how loud it had been. I was 31, I was recovering from emergency surgery I had not been allowed to postpone, and the people who raised me had used the 72 hours I spent under anesthesia to hand the only piece of family land I had ever loved to the son they had always loved more. What they did not know, what none of them knew, was that the woman they were trying to erase from the deed had spent the last 9 years building a career out of reading documents exactly like the one in that photograph, and that I had in a drawer at home a folder of receipts going back 4 years that would make the word grantee mean something very different than what they thought it meant. The part you came for happens late in this story, and I promise you it is worth the wait, because none of them, not my mother, not my father, not my golden brother, saw what was coming, and the day they finally did, not one of them raised their voice, because by then there was nothing left to shout about. Welcome back to the Quiet Ledger, where we tell the stories of people who were counted out and counted wrong, and where the receipts always come due. If you have ever been the one in your family who did the showing up while someone else did the taking, if you have ever been called dramatic for noticing what was happening to you, this story is for you, and I am asking you to stay all the way to the end, because the moment the math finally lands is the moment you came here for. Drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from, and be sure to subscribe so the next one finds you. Now, let me back up, because to understand what I did with that one phone call, you have to understand the house. And to understand the house, you have to understand the long, patient way a family teaches one of its children that her love is a tax, and her brother's love is a gift. The house on Larkspur Lane was not large, 1,100 square feet, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a yellow linoleum floor my mother had been meaning to replace since 1998. And a back porch with a screen door that slapped shut twice every time. Never just once, because the spring was old and we had all stopped caring. My father bought it the year I was born, with money he had saved working swing shifts at the rail yard. And for the first 8 years of my life, it was the safest place I knew. The pear tree was older than the house. The step to the porch had warped the first winter and never been fixed because my father said a warped step keeps you honest. You have to look down before you go up. I learned later he said that about a lot of things that were just broken. Corin came along when I was 4. From the beginning, he was the bright one, which is what my mother called him when she meant the loud one, and I was the quiet one, which is what she called me when she meant the one who could be skipped. I want to be fair about this, because I have spent a lot of years being unfair to myself on their behalf, and I am done with that. My parents were not monsters. They were tired people who had decided early that one of their children was a project and the other was an accessory. And once that decision was made, they did not revisit it, the way you do not revisit which hand you write with. Corinne was the project. Corinne needed encouragement. Corinne needed lessons. Corinne needed the room with the window that faced the pear tree, because Corinne was a light sleeper. I needed nothing, because needing nothing was the only trait of mine they had ever praised. And a child will become anything you praise her for, even invisible. By the time I was 10, I had a system. I made my own lunches, I did my own laundry on Saturday mornings before cartoons, And I learned to ask for things by not asking for them, by leaving the desire on the counter like a coupon someone might notice. Sometimes they did. Mostly they did not. When I was 12, I asked for a winter coat because the sleeves of mine ended 3 inches above my wrists, and my mother said money was tight and could I make it work one more season. And I said yes, because yes was the magic word in our house, the word that kept the temperature down. That same December, Corin got a new bike. I remember the bike very clearly. It was navy blue, with white pinstripes and a bell shaped like a small chrome bell pepper. And when he wheeled it into the kitchen on Christmas morning, my mother cried and my father took a picture with the camera he only used for Corin, and I stood in the doorway in my 2 short coat sleeves and I clapped, because clapping was also the magic word. I am not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I am telling you so you understand the shape of the thing. The shape of the thing was a house with 2 children in it, where one was the son and one was the bookkeeper. And the bookkeeper was expected to keep the books and never to mention that the son cost more than the household earned. I left for college on a scholarship I had applied for without telling them, because telling them would have meant explaining why. And explaining why would have required language we did not use in that house. I came back twice a year for the first few years, and then more often as my father's health began to fold in on itself, the way a tent folds when a pole gives. By the time I was 27, I was driving the 2 hours every other weekend, bringing groceries my mother pretended she had not asked for, paying the water bill the month it almost got shut off, sliding a check across the kitchen table with the memo line left blank because my mother could not bear to see the word property tax written in my handwriting. Corin lived 20 minutes away. Corin did not come. Corin was busy with what my mother called his ventures, which is the word she used for the businesses he started and abandoned the way other people start and abandon diets, each one announced at Thanksgiving and never mentioned at Christmas. There was the food truck, there was the app. There was the brief, baffling period when he was going to import something from somewhere and sell it to someone, and my mother spoke about it as if he had been knighted. He borrowed money from them for each venture. I know because I saw the withdrawals when my mother finally let me help with the bank statements. And I saw, too, that the withdrawals had a shape, a steady downward shape. And I saw that the shape did not bend when my father stopped working. It only steepened. I did not say anything about the withdrawals. I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was to put money back in from my end, quietly, with the memo line blank, the way you patch a tire from the inside, hoping the driver will not notice the patch and will not ask why the tire keeps going soft. That is the recurring object in this story, by the way, though I did not know it yet. The blank memo line. The check I signed without writing what it was for, because writing what it was for would have required someone in that house to admit what it was for. I have a folder full of them now. I will get to that. The pear tree dropped its fruit on the roof every September with a sound like someone knocking politely from above, and every September my mother asked Corin to come over and rake the yard, and every September Corin said he would. And every September I came over the second weekend of October and raked it myself, while my father watched from the porch and told me I had always been the dependable one. And the word dependable in our family was not a compliment, it was a job description. And the pay was love, and the benefits were back pay you would never see. The breaking point did not come at the pear tree. The breaking point came in a hospital. 2 springs ago, I started getting headaches that did not respond to anything, and the kind of fatigue that makes you forget the names of streets you have lived on. And after a year of being told by 3 different doctors that I was probably just stressed, I finally found a 4th doctor who ordered the scan that found the thing. And the thing was not the worst kind of thing, but it was the kind of thing that required a surgeon and a date on a calendar that could not be moved. I told my mother on a Tuesday. She said, "Oh, honey." And then she said, "You know your brother has been under so much stress. Please don't tell him until after his birthday." His birthday was 11 days away. My surgery was 9. I told her I would not be telling anyone anything because I did not have the energy for the version of the story she would need me to tell. And she said, "That's my Wren. Always so strong." And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed after I hung up and feeling something I had not let myself feel in maybe 20 years, which was not sadness exactly, and not anger exactly, but the cold, clean feeling of a ledger finally balancing in a direction I had not chosen. I went under on a Thursday morning at 7:42. I know the time because I asked the anesthesiologist to tell me, because I have always wanted to know exactly when things happen to me. It is the only piece of any event I can ever truly own. When I woke up, it was Saturday afternoon and my phone had 91 notifications, and one of them was Della's message about the deed. The surgery had gone well, the surgeon told me later, with a kind of careful pride doctors use when they have done a hard thing correctly. I thanked her. I asked for a glass of water. I asked the nurse for my phone charger. I did not call my mother. I did not call my brother. I did not call my father. I called a woman named Iris Mendenhall, who had been my supervisor at my first job out of school and who was now a partner at the firm I worked for. And I asked her if she could pull, very quietly and very quickly, the chain of title on a small property on Larkspur Lane in the county where I had grown up. She said, "Ren, you just had surgery." I said, "Iris, I know." She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Give me until Monday morning, and do not, under any circumstance, sign anything anyone puts in front of you between now and then." I did not tell her why. I did not have to. Iris had known me for 9 years, and Iris had once told me that the difference between a good document examiner and a great one was that the great one knew which silence was hiding a signature. I work in a field most people never think about until it ruins their lives. I am a title and records analyst, which is a long way of saying I read the paper trail of who owns what, and I find the places where the paper trail lies. I have spent 9 years looking at deeds that said one thing and meant another, at quitclaims signed by people who did not understand what they were quitting, at chains of title with one link missing and a fortune resting on the gap. I am very, very good at my job. None of my family knew what I did. They knew I worked at an office, and they knew I made enough to keep paying the things they had stopped paying. And that was as much curiosity as they had ever invested in me. My mother once introduced me at a wedding as our daughter. She works with papers. And I had laughed because what else do you do? And the woman she was introducing me to had laughed too, and we had both moved on. And the moment had stayed with me like a splinter you can feel but cannot find. Working with papers. They had no idea. On Monday morning, Iris called me at 9:06. She said, "Ren, are you sitting down?" I said, "I am in a hospital bed, Iris. I am always sitting down." She did not laugh. She said, "The deed they recorded on Thursday is a quitclaim from your parents to your brother, with consideration listed as $10 and other valuable consideration, and it was notarized at a mobile notary's office at 4:11 on Thursday afternoon." I said, "Thursday at 4:11, I was in a recovery room." She said, "I know." And then she said the thing that changed everything. She said, "Ren, your parents do not have clean title to convey." I asked her to say that again. She said it again, slowly. "Your parents do not have clean title to convey." There is a recorded lien on this property from a county tax assistance program from 2019. And there are 4 years of property tax payments made by a third party, and unless I am misreading the cover letters, the third party is you. I closed my eyes. I could feel the pear tree dropping fruit on a roof I had not slept under in 13 years. I said, "Iris, please tell me you can send me everything you have." She said, "I already did. It's in your inbox. And Ren, one more thing." I said, "Yes." She said, "Do not say anything yet. Not to anyone. Let them think you don't know. Let them spend the deed. Not yet." I said, "Not yet." And I did not. For 3 weeks, I said nothing. I went home from the hospital. I let my mother come over once to bring me a casserole, and I let her sit on my couch and ask me how I was feeling, and I told her I was tired, which was true. And I told her I was grateful for the casserole, which was also true, and I did not mention the house. And she did not mention the house. And we sat in the careful weather of a family that has agreed not to look at the room they have just set on fire. Corin came by once. He brought a bottle of wine I could not drink and a card from a stationery store that he had clearly bought on the way over because the price sticker was still on the back. He sat on my couch in the spot my mother had sat in, and he told me that he and Mom and Dad had been talking and that they wanted to make sure the house was, quote, "in the right hands going forward," and that he hoped I understood, and that I had always been so independent and so capable, and that they knew I would be fine, and that this was really about taking care of the people who needed it, by which he meant himself, although he did not say so. And I sat across from him with my hands folded in my lap like a woman in a portrait, and I said, "Of course, Corin. I said, "I just want what's best for the family." I watched his shoulders drop 2 inches. I watched him exhale. I watched him reach for the wine he had brought and pour himself a glass in my kitchen as if the kitchen, too, had recently become his. He said, "You've always been the dependable one." He said it like a compliment, the way our father used to. He said it like a man closing a ledger he believed had balanced. I smiled. I did not say what I knew. Not yet. While he poured his wine, I thought about the folder. The folder lived in the second drawer of my filing cabinet, under the tab marked Larkspur, and it contained, in chronological order, every check I had written to the county treasurer for the property taxes on the house on Larkspur Lane for the last 4 years, every receipt the county had mailed back, every utility bill I had paid when my father forgot or could not, and at the very back, in a plastic sleeve, the original cover letter from the County Tax Assistance Program from 2019, the one my mother had applied for without telling my father, the one that had attached a lien to the property in exchange for 2 years of deferred payments, the one that had never been satisfied, because 2 months after she got the letter, she had stuffed it in a kitchen drawer and forgotten about it, and I had found it the following spring while looking for a screwdriver, and I had read it standing in her kitchen with my coat still on. And I had quietly photocopied it at the library that afternoon because something in me, even then, had known that one day this piece of paper was going to matter. It mattered now. While Corin drank my wine in my kitchen and explained to me, gently, the way you explain weather to a child, that the house was going to be his and that I should not feel bad about it, I was running, in the back of my mind, a chain of title in chronological order, and I was finding, at every link, my own name. My checks, my signature, my account. My memo line, blank, 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 4 years of blank memo lines that, when you stacked them, were not blank at all. They were a sentence, and the sentence said, "I paid for this house." I called Iris the next morning. I said, "Walk me through it." She said, "Ren, I have to be careful here because you are family adjacent to this matter and I cannot represent you. But I can refer you, and I have already called Theo Brassard at Brassard & Lynn, and he is expecting your call." I called Theo. Theo was 63 years old and had been practicing real property law for 38 of those years, and he spoke the way old surgeons speak, slowly, without ornament, with the certainty of a man who has watched a great many people lie to themselves about land. He took my folder. He spent 6 days with it. On the 7th day, he called me into his office and he sat across from me at a desk that was clean except for one yellow legal pad. And he said, "Miss Halloway, your parents conveyed a property they did not have clean authority to convey, on a property encumbered by a county lien they never satisfied, while you were the de facto payor of record of the obligations that kept that lien from being foreclosed." He paused. He looked at me over his glasses. He said, "In my professional opinion, that quitclaim is contestable on at least 3 independent grounds, and depending on how you wish to proceed, you have options that range from a quiet correction to a public unwinding." He said, "What would you like to do?" I thought about the warped step. I thought about the pear tree. I thought about my mother telling me at 12 that money was tight, and the bell on Corin's bike going ting, ting, ting in the kitchen on Christmas morning. I thought about my father saying I had always been the dependable one, and I thought about my brother sitting on my couch 3 weeks after my surgery telling me he hoped I understood. I said, "Mr. Brassard, I would like to do this in front of witnesses. I would like to do it on a Sunday afternoon, at my parents' house, at the family dinner my mother is already planning for my brother's birthday, and I would like to do it without raising my voice." He set down his pen. He smiled very slightly, the way a man smiles when a piece of equipment he has been calibrating for 40 years finally settles into true. He said, "That can be arranged." The dinner was on a Sunday in late October. The pear tree had finished dropping its fruit and the yard had not been raked because no one had asked me to come and rake it, which I noticed, and which I filed away with the rest of it. My mother had made a pot roast. My father was in his chair by the window, thinner than I remembered. His hands folded over a blanket he did not need because the house was warm. Corin was there with his girlfriend, a sweet, anxious woman named Bryn, who kept apologizing for things she had not done. And Della was there, my cousin Della, who had sent me the photograph of the deed and who had been quietly furious on my behalf for 3 weeks. And there were 2 other people my mother had invited. because my mother always invited extra people to Corin's birthdays, so the audience would be larger. A neighbor named Mr. Pell and an old family friend named Linnea, who had known us all since I was small. 7 witnesses. If you counted my parents, which I did. I had asked Theo to wait in his car at the end of the street. I had told him I would text him when it was time. I sat through the pot roast. I sat through the toasts. I sat through Corin standing up at the head of the table in the house he now believed he owned, and lifting his glass and saying that he just wanted to thank Mom and Dad for everything they had done for him, and that he knew it had not been easy on them, and that he was going to make them proud with the house, and that he had already, quote, started thinking about renovations. My mother dabbed at her eyes. My father nodded. Bryn smiled, the careful smile of a woman who was beginning to suspect something but did not yet know what. Della stared at her plate. I waited. I waited until Corin sat down. I waited until my mother said, Ren, honey, do you want to say something? The way she always asked me to say something at Corin's events, the way a hostess asks the wallpaper if it has anything to add. I set down my fork. I said I would, actually. I stood up. I did not raise my voice. I did not have to. I said, before I do, I want to ask Corin one question. And Corin, please be honest, because Bryn is here, and Mr. Pell is here, and Linnea is here, and I want everyone to hear your answer. I said, Corin, do you believe that Mom and Dad gave you the house on Larkspur Lane fair and square? Corin laughed. Corin had always laughed when he was uncomfortable. It was a tell I had clocked when he was 9. He said, of course, Ren, what kind of question is that? I said, a clarifying one. Did you know, when you signed the deed, that there was a tax lien on the property from 2019 that has never been satisfied? Corin's smile did a small thing at the corners. He said, what? I said, did you know that the property taxes on this house have been paid by me, not by Mom and Dad, every year since 2021? He said, what are you talking about? My mother said, Ren, sweetheart, this is not the time. I said, Mom, it is exactly the time. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the folder. I set it on the table next to the pot roast. I opened it. I said, this is every check I wrote to the county for the taxes on this house for the last 4 years. This is the cover letter from the County Tax Assistance Program from 2019, with Mom's signature on it. This is the lien. This is the deed Mom and Dad signed 3 weeks ago while I was in a recovery room from surgery they were not told about, because I did not have the strength to manage their reactions. And this, I said, and I pulled out the last page. This is a letter from my attorney, Theodore Brassart of Brassart and Lynn, stating that the quitclaim is contestable on 3 independent grounds, and that he is prepared to file by Tuesday morning unless we resolve this here, tonight, as a family. The room did the thing rooms do when a furnace clicks off. Corin said, you? And then he did not finish the sentence. Bryn put her hand over her mouth. Linnea, who had known us all since I was small, said, oh, Maeve, very quietly, to my mother. The way you say someone's name when you have just understood something about them you did not want to know. My father in his chair by the window closed his eyes. My mother said, Ren, please, you are embarrassing your brother. I said, Mom, I am not the one who embarrassed him. I sat back down. I did not slam anything. I did not cry. I picked up my fork. I said, I am going to finish my pot roast, and then I am going to go home, and tomorrow morning, Mr. Brassart is going to call you, and we are going to fix this. And the way we fix this is going to be the easy way or the hard way, and I would like very much for it to be the easy way, because I love you. All of you. Even now. And I would prefer not to do this in a courtroom. We did it the easy way. Not because they had become better people overnight, but because the alternative had a price tag none of them could pay. The quitclaim was rescinded on a Wednesday. The lien was satisfied out of a settlement my parents agreed to in writing, in which they acknowledged, in language Theo had drafted very carefully, that I had been the payor of record on the property and that no future conveyance of the home would occur without my written consent. The house on Larkspur Lane went back into my parents' names, with a recorded notice attached, and my brother went home to Bryn, who, I learned later from Della, asked him 3 questions on the drive that he could not answer, and who moved out the following spring. I did not gloat, I did not call, I did not post anything. I went home to my own apartment, and I sat on my couch in the spot Corin had sat in, and I poured myself a glass of the wine he had left in my kitchen, and I drank it slowly, and I felt, I will be honest with you, not very much. A little tiredness, a little grief. The very small, very clean satisfaction of a ledger closing in the direction it should have closed years ago. No triumph, no pleasure, or not much. Just the quiet of a furnace that has finally clicked off. My father died 7 months later. I went to the funeral. I sat in the front row. I held my mother's hand because she asked me to, and because, in the end, a hand is a hand, and a mother is a mother, and I had decided a long time before that I was not going to become a person who could not hold a hand. My brother sat 2 seats down. We did not speak. We have not spoken since, not really, except for the kind of holiday texts that are not conversations but treaties. My mother and I see each other once a month, at a diner halfway between her town and mine, where we order the same thing every time and talk about the weather and the neighbors and never, ever about the house. The house sits on Larkspur Lane with the warped step and the pear tree and the screen door that still slaps twice, and when my mother is gone it will come to me, because we have all signed papers now that say so, and when it comes to me I will do with it what I have been planning to do with it for a year. I am going to fix the step. I am going to keep the pear tree. I am going to set up a small fund in my father's name because he was not the worst of them and because grief is allowed to be complicated, and the fund is going to pay 1 year of property taxes for one family in our county that is about to lose a home over a debt they did not understand. And it is going to do that every year until I am gone, because that is the only kind of revenge I am interested in, which is the kind that quietly hands to other overlooked people the thing that was almost taken from me. I keep the folder, by the way. The Larkspur folder. It lives in the second drawer of my filing cabinet, under the tab where it has always lived, and once a year, on the anniversary of the Sunday dinner, I take it out and I look through it, not because I need to, but because I want to remember what it cost me to learn what I learned, which is this. Blood made us relatives. Showing up made me family to myself. The people who love you do not ask you to pay for the privilege of being unseen. The receipts always come due, but you do not have to be loud when you present them. You only have to have kept them. And if you are out there tonight, listening to this in your car or your kitchen or a hospital bed of your own, and you are the one in your family who does the showing up while someone else does the taking, and you have been told that your quiet is your weakness, I want you to hear me very clearly. Your quiet is not your weakness. Your quiet is the room where you keep the truth until the truth is ready. Keep your receipts. Keep your memo lines, blank or not. Keep the small folder in the second drawer. And when the day comes, and it will come, you will not have to scream. You will only have to open the folder, and the folder will say everything you never had to. That's my story. 1 call, 1 folder, 1 Sunday dinner. If this reached you, if any part of it sounded like a house you have lived in, take this as your sign to start keeping your own folder tonight, not because you are planning a war, but because you are worth a record. Share this with the person you thought of while you were listening. Drop a comment and tell me about the warped step in your own life. Hit subscribe so the next story finds you, and I will see you in the next one.